So this is going to be a tuck follow along handstand session. So first we're going to start with a quad stretch, opening the hips up against the wall. So go as close as you can where the hip is fully open, and you can go into a slight posterior tilt with the pelvis. To make it harder, you take the knee closer to the wall. Make it easier, take the knee away. And to add in the upper body as well, you can lift the same side arm up above the head. So if I'm stretching the right quad, then I'm going to stretch up with the right arm up above my body and try and get the bicep towards the air. Okay, so it's a 60-second hold, and then swap over to the left side, same thing. Moving the knee closer to the wall to make it harder, or further away from the wall to make it easier. Same thing, if you want to make it, add in the upper body as well. Take the left hand up above the head, bicep close to the air, stretch out, reach, hold with the right hand. You can pull over and then really get into that lat. Just make sure you don't lose the posterior tilted pelvis, and you're still feeling a good stretch down the front of the left leg. And that's the end of the 60 seconds. Okay, now we're going to go into the hip flexor stretch. So now moving away from the wall, back into a lunge position, and then driving the right hip towards the left heel. Now if I don't feel much of a stretch, I can take the left foot further forwards. So then I can keep taking that left foot further and further forwards, so increasing the stretch on that right hip. Still pulling the hip as hard as I can towards that left heel. Well tucking under. You shouldn't feel anything in the low back, so the stretch should all be on the front of the leg. And again, we're holding this 60 seconds. I can reach up above my head, so bringing that upper body into the lats there. And then swap sides. So 60 seconds on the left side now, same thing, into that lunge position, tuck the pelvis under, and then drive the left hip forwards towards the right heel. If I want to make the stretch deeper, I can move that right foot further forwards, driving the left hip towards the right heel, keeping that pelvis tucked under. And again, you can take the hands up above your head to add in the torso. Now in this follow along, I'm doing the stretches for 60 seconds. Now obviously if you're tighter, you could go longer, you could pulse in and out. So that's the end of the 60 seconds on the left side. Okay, now we're going to go into a single leg hamstring stretch. Now I like to do these elevated. You can do it on the floor and reach forwards towards the straight leg, but ideally elevated with the foot at least 90 degrees at the hip. So I'm locking out the knee, making sure that's straight and not allowing the pelvis to twist. So keep that left knee locked as a priority. And then to increase the stretch, I'm going to try and take my head towards my toe, keeping the back flat. So I'm reaching forwards and down, not just down. So I'm trying not to round the back, trying to keep the back flat, reaching the head towards the toe, as opposed to head towards the knee, which should keep a flatter back. And again, 60-second hold. I'm trying to pull that hip backwards as I take the head forwards. Okay, that's 60, and then swap sides, going to the right side, same deal. Lock out that right knee, chest open, torso straight, trying to reach the head towards the toe, not the head towards the knee. All while trying to pull the hip pelvis backwards and not allow the hips to twist. Okay, that's 60 seconds, so we'll come back out of that. Then we're just going to go into a forward fold. So normal forward fold, I'm taking the head towards the floor. So knees locked backwards. And then depending on where we are with this, so if we're nice and comfortable in this position, I can even do a few bounces at the bottom, play around trying to get as deep as I can. So pulling the elbows towards the toes. And trying to lengthen the spine as best we can, so keeping the knees locked backwards, trying to reach down towards the floor. So lengthening the spine while lengthening the hamstrings. If you're super tight in this position, you can bend the knees in and out as you go deeper into the position, or you can even go into like a down dog with the hands on the floor and feet further away. But ideally we'll just hang in this forward fold position for 60 seconds. With the handstands, the higher we can get the hip compared to the shoulders and the torso, the easier it's going to be to enter the handstand. Okay, then I'm just a couple of times I'm going to pull down into my squat position, have the head torso as straight as possible at the top of the squat, and then pull the head towards the floor as I straighten the legs. And pull the elbows again down towards the floor, and then again repeat that back and down to the squat position. Okay, and then coming back out of that one, so into the wrist prep. So now this one I've put as needed because a lot of people have tight wrists. You have areas that are tight, areas that feel easier, so just spend more time in the tight areas. Just try and keep the shoulders on top of the hands. So if you're doing circles like I am here, try and keep the shoulders as on top of the hands as the middle of the circle if you're doing the rotations. And I'm constantly pushing the floor away from me, so I'm trying to keep my arms straight as I do this. If I find I'm bending the elbows, then I'm probably pushing too far into my tight areas and I need to back off a little bit. Let the hands, wrists warm up. So changing direction, turning the fingers out to the side and walking the hands round. All different positions. Transfer weight from left to right. And then walk fingers round to the back. So fingers are back towards the knees, and I'm going to walk the knees in towards the fingers and sit the butt back towards the heels. So we get more of a forearm stretch. Okay, then walk the knees backwards and slowly peel the palms up away from the floor. So slowly through the palms, then through the knuckles and fingertips. Shake the hands out. Okay, now going into a shoulder back stretch. Now there's a couple of different variations of this one. We can adjust the hand position. I like to do it elevated, so if I have something I can put my hands on, so the box or the couch. You can do it on the floor, so on fingertips looking at the fingers. If you're on the box, going to turn so thumbs are facing upwards. So fingers forwards, thumbs up, hands shoulder width apart. Then walk the knees backwards so the hips are on top of the knees. And then I have two different options here. I can tuck under, so tucking the pelvis under and then pulling down, which is going to give a very deep stretch into the thoracic mid-back area. I can arch the low back, which is going to give more of a stretch through all of the extension. If you're tighter through that back area like I am, I think you're better off going into that tucked under position. So I'm actually trying to open the chest and shoulders and the back while I have that tucked under pelvis position. So this one can be quite aggressive, so I can move up and then go back down into the stretch, or I can hold the stretch. But I'm going to spend about 60 seconds going in and out of that position. Okay, and then slowly come out of the back stretch. Okay, now we're going to go into a backline drill. So this is a positioning drill. So it's all about making the body one segment. Now we can start with the knees at 90 degrees, hips at 90 degrees, and push the low back into the floor. Then I'm going to stretch my hands out, holding the stick shoulder width apart. And I'm going to keep pushing the stick away from me. The lower I take the stick, the more I straighten the legs, and the more I lengthen the body, the harder it's going to be to keep that low back on the floor. So now the goal is 60 seconds. If it starts to get too hard, you can bend the knees slightly. I can raise the feet higher. I can raise the hands higher. I could even put the hands by my side. The main priority wants to be that hip position, so keeping the low back pushed close to the floor or touching the floor. We just don't want that to change. We don't want the weight of the legs pulling the hip into a arched position and making a big gap underneath the low back. So it's about making the torso and the legs connected. So I could tuck the head and look at the toes and keep in that like more of a hollow body position, or I can take the head and place it on the floor. So trying to keep that body in one segment, lower back pushed into the floor. Ideally you should be able to breathe while you're doing this. If you're holding your breath, it's going to get really hard and shows that your position isn't that efficient if you need to hold the breath. Okay, that's 60 seconds and then we'll come back out. Okay, a little rest if you need it, and we're going to go next into a chest to wall handstand. So chest to wall position, I'm going to walk the feet up the wall. I just want to stay in a positive position. So what I mean by that is the hips are going to be away from the wall and not collapse to the wall. So not like a banana position. So ideal is very close to the wall, toes very, very light on the wall. Or if you can, you could even freestand off the wall. So I'm pushing the floor away, reaching for the ceiling with the toes. So just hold as long as you can with good technique. If you start to feel like your body position changes and you start to collapse, see if you can push back out. If you can't push back out, walk down the way you came up with control, and then just check the time. So see how long you're holding for. Ideally, you want to get to the point where we can do this for 90 seconds, 2 minutes with control, and stay in that good position all the way. Okay, that's 60 seconds, so come on down if you're doing 60, if you count on for 90, or as long as you can. Okay, once we've finished that, we're going to go into a straddle good morning position. So I'm going to sit down in seated straddle on the floor. Now if I need to, if I feel like I'm falling backwards in this position, I can raise the butt up on some mats. And I'm just going to take the elbows towards the floor. Now with the elbows, I'm going to try and take them further and further away from the hips. I don't want to just take the head down towards the floor. I want to try and extend the torso and try and make the body, the torso, longer as I come down. So ideally you'll be in a flat back position. but we're just going to hang here more passively on this one, so 60 to 90 seconds, just a rest between the handstand drills. Slowly walking those elbows, or if you have your hands on the floor, further away from you. Nice, and then we're going to come back out of that. So stand up, shake the legs out, and then we're going to go into our entries. So today we're just going to do the kick-ups, so either to the wall or freestanding. So whichever one you can do with control. We're just going to practice this for 60 to 90 seconds. So only practicing good reps. So I can do more of like a gymnastic kick-up where I start on my feet and transfer weight to the hands or kick, or I can have my hands already on the floor, shoulders on top of the hands, push the floor away, and then kick from there. I prefer to teach the one where the shoulders on top of the hands, so we have more of that consistent base. So shoulders on top of the hands, hips high, push the floor away, and then kick the hips and the feet on top of the shoulders. So shoulders, head position stays the same all the time, and I'm just adding the hips and the feet to it. So attempt 60 to 90 seconds. If you find that you're not catching freestanding, then go up against the wall. Either kiss him with one foot, then the second, or ideally kissing the wall with both feet at the same time. If that's easy, you can try catching just before the wall and then slowly taking the heels to the wall. So shoulders on top of hands, hips high, and then kick, hip on top of shoulders, feet on top of hips. Show control either against the wall or freestanding, and then slowly come back down. Okay, and then rest. So next drill is going to be the mini tuck. Now the mini tuck is just the same as a normal tuck position, so we're going to close the hips and the knees very slightly. So like a very small tuck or squat position, and then I'm going to try and heel pull from the wall. So using the fingertips, so I'm not kicking off the wall, the legs are coming off as one piece. Now that mini tuck position should make it a little bit easier to pull from the wall. It's also easier to hold a straighter handstand because it gives an out. So if you're too tight in the body, the straight position can be very demanding. Bending the knees and the hips slightly makes it slightly easier. So if we have a freestanding hold, it's from that straight handstand. I'm going to try and go into that mini tuck position. So a very small close of the hips, a very small close of the knees, while keeping the toes pointed. Shoulder and head should stay in exactly the same position, so still looking at the floor in the same way. And then if we're freestanding, push back out into the freestanding straight hold and come back down again. So just playing around, experimenting with that position. So remember, it's only a mini tuck, so it's very small bend in the knees, very small bend in the hips. So once you've done 60 to 90 seconds of that, the next drill is a tuck hold. So this one is actually the same as what we just done, but this time we're coming down the wall deeper. I'm trying to stop the shoulders going towards the wall. And then I'm going to hold that tuck position as deep as I can. So we want to try and have that same angle at the knees and the hips. Try and keep the shoulders on top of the hands as the main thing. So exactly the same if we're going to go freestanding. Just make sure that those shoulders stay on top of the hands. The hips and the knees close at the same angle as each other. So we don't want to just have the hips moving or just have the knees moving. So I'm pulling as deep as I can with the knees, so closing the hip and the knees at the same time, keeping those shoulders on top of the hands, keeping the toes pointed. So the hands, shoulder, hips should be in a straight line, and then push back out. So again, practice 60-90 seconds of attempts to hold that tuck position either back against the wall, butt touching, or the freestanding version. Once you've finished that, we'll go into a seated straddle good morning, but we'll add the rotation in this time. So we're going to sit down in the straddle position, so raise the hips up if you're a little bit tight in that position. Some people just find it more comfortable with the hips raised up slightly. And then I'm going to come down elbows towards the floor, or hands towards the floor if you're a little bit tighter, but I'm still trying to get those elbows or hands further away from the hips to lengthen the torso. And then I'm going to add the rotation in, so I'm going to take my right shoulder towards my right knee and then lift up with the left hand. If I can get my right shoulder to touch the right knee, I can try and get my right shoulder towards the floor, which is much harder, and then rotate and try and reach the hand up. Okay, swapping over to the other side, so left shoulder towards left knee, and then reaching up with the right hand. And again, if I can get that left shoulder to touch the knee, I can try and get the left shoulder to the floor. Okay, back over to the right side again. So right shoulder towards right knee, lift the left hand. If it's easy, try and take the shoulder towards the floor. And then one more time, back over to the left. Now, like I said, with any of these drills, pause the video, do longer on them if you want to spend more time, either in the stretches or on the handstand drills. Now when you come back to the middle with this straddle, you should find that you're deeper. So you should be able to get closer towards that floor. It's good to measure it, elbow to the floor, head to the floor, chest to the floor, belly button to the floor is the goal. Okay, now we're going to put them together. So we're going to go from the straight handstand and lower to the tuck. Now we can do this against the wall. So I'm going to kick up to the wall into a straight handstand, and then I'm going to try and come down to that deep tuck position that we just done the holds in, but this time I'm just going to hold for 2 to 3 seconds and then pull back out into the straight handstand again. So I start in my straight handstand, pull down as deep as I can, keeping the legs squeezed together. Butt's going to go backwards towards the wall, but the shoulders stay on top of the hands, and then I push back out to my straight handstand. The straight handstand should look the same each time. It should be the same as my first position, and then the tuck handstand should look the same at the bottom as well. So the butt just touching the wall, legs squeezed together, toes pointed, shoulders staying on top of the hands. If I can't do that with control, I'm just not going to go so deep in the tuck. Obviously we can do it against the wall, or we can do it freestanding. Now if you are doing it freestanding, if you fall out too often, then make sure you do go back to the wall for the reps, and then practice as you can the freestanding, but don't do too many where you're falling. We want to teach the body the good technique. So pulling down as deep as you can, keeping the shoulders on top of the hands, bending the knees and the hips at the same angle, hold for 2 to 3 seconds, push back out to your straight. So ideally we'll be able to make multiple repetitions there, and each position, each home position, the straight and the tuck, looks the same. Okay, into the stretch. So for the rest, we're going to do a wall straddle stretch. So just laying down onto your side, so 90 degrees at the hip, and then I'm going to go onto my back. Ideally, if you're flexible enough, butt will be touching the wall and the floor. If you can't touch the floor, if the butt lifts up, just move yourself further away from the wall, and then relax the upper body. So opening the palms facing up, opening the chest, but every few seconds wiggling the feet a little bit wider, so the stretch should be in the legs and you should be resting the upper body. So just rest in here for 60 to 90 seconds. Okay, and then slowly come out of the stretch. Now this one's more about mobility. That's why we had the long rest before this one. So it's going to be a chest to wall tuck down. Now this one you have to be very careful how far away you come away from the wall. So hand position is going to make a big difference to how much room you have to slide the feet down. So we're going to slide the shins down the wall, trying to keep the shoulders on top of the hands. So the wall's going to push your hips over and away from the wall. So you're going to have to constantly try and pull back with the shoulders towards the wall. So kicking up to the wall, walk backwards like your normal chest to wall handstand, just not so close. Now I'm going to break at the hip, break at the knees, go as deep as I can with the legs squeezed together. Now you see I went all the way past my hips there. This time I'm going to squeeze the legs together, take the knees down towards the hips, but I've moved the hands in a little bit closer there so there's not so much space. So the legs are like pushing my hips away from the wall while I'm trying to take my shoulders and keep my shoulders over my hands. So you want to feel a big push with the upper back traps to keep the shoulders on top of the hands and push you back. So then we can play with that distance. Our hands are away from the wall. So if your hands are too far away, you'll slide all the way down the wall. If your hands are too close, you won't be able to slide down at all. But try and keep those legs squeezed together. Have a play with that for 60 to 90 seconds. So pause the video as much as you need to. Okay, then just into some thoracic rotations. So more of that hip, so more of that upper body opening, the back chest area, and into that thoracic spine. So I'm just going to go through rotations, trying to keep the hips in the same position, the legs on top of each other. Keep the knees at 90 degrees, hips at 90 degrees. Don't lift that knee up. If you're flexible, you'll be able to straighten that bottom leg and take the top knee towards the floor. I'm definitely not flexible in this range, so I have to keep my legs on top of each other and just trying to open that up as much as I can. So I'm trying to get that left shoulder towards the floor by opening the chest, back and shoulders, not by forcing the arm down. So 60 seconds on one side. And then obviously same on the other side. So flip over. So now I'm trying to open up and keep that left shoulder on the floor while I open up the right shoulder and hand. Again, I want it coming from the thoracic and the chest, torso area, not forcing the arm down, all while trying to keep those legs in the same position, hips in the same position. Okay, now we're just going to finish with a tuck hold for max freestanding time. So this is where we go into our deepest position that we can hold, and either pull away from the wall or just start freestanding, and we'll see how long we can hold for. So I recommend you video yourself on this one and video from the side so you can watch where your shoulders and hips and what's happening to the knees and that angle. If we're going to do it against the wall, I'd recommend you do back to wall so you can pull away, so you can do like a heel pull to max freestanding hold, and then video yourself and see how long you can get. So normal position like we've just been practicing, so legs squeezed together, hips towards the wall, knees bent, so I could be in a smaller tuck position, shoulders on top of the hands, pull away and hold for max time. Or I can go freestanding, same thing, go as deep as I can, trying to pull down with the knees, closing the hips at the same angle, and then holding. So the more confident I feel, I could pull down deeper as long as I don't fall out of the position and those shoulders don't go towards the fingers. So send us a message if you have any questions. Remember, you might need to pause or change this depending on which areas that you need to work on. Or if there's anything that you can't do, obviously just skip that area and send us a message and we can give you an alternative. Alright guys, we'll speak to you next time.